No, the reason you can't find like, purification isolation studies and then a further study using the isolate and purified virus matter to actually introduce with natural means, that's like with breathing and skin and eating, like that kind of thing. It needs to have like turn a healthy organism sick using that, and if you had to, it would be like purely the isolate being injected, but obviously that does not show contagion at all. If you have to inject it, that's kind of not that's the opposite of what's contagious allegedly. I think what would happen is the entire bubble, as I'm realizing, of that bacteria and viruses are contagious things would pop. And that's a many $1 trillion investment that's going on, that's still making tons and pumping out tons. Not until they're ready to flush that whole paradigm will they actually cop to that one. It's the same thing as that they kept using mercury and silver and heavy metals in people's teeth up until more recently, and quietly start to replace that with epoxies called composite. And the reason, of course, is that they can't cop to that they've just literally poisoned lots and lots of people, causing untold amounts of death and disease, and actually having to pay for it. Well, this is the same exact thing.
The grass is always greener on the other side. No matter wherever you reside, you always think that someplace else is where you finally find yourself. But if you went to someplace else, you know you'd only find, after a while, yourself thinking. The grass is always greener on the other side. No matter wherever you reside, you always think that someplace else is where you finally find yourself. But if you went to someplace else, you know you'd only find it's exactly like
You're listening to truthconduit.com with Chris Macmillan.
All right, good. Look at that slick back hair. Darrell's ready with his beautiful Hawaiian background. Yeah. What time is it?
It is 1:01 p.m.
I can never keep up with
I'm
you.
5 hours behind you because you are in Central.
Yeah, I can never keep up with you Pacific Islander people.
It's really damn simple, but it's not that far away. It's not like Matt, which is a bit more math.
I've
across
got
the date line and all that.
Europe.
Yeah.
I'm aware of Europe. I always instinctively know what time it is in Europe because I lived there for so long. So I was always aware of the time difference. When I was in Europe, I always knew what time it was in Texas, and now vice versa. I always know when my friends are sleeping, whether to send them a rude text in the middle of the night or not.
Right on.
Yeah, because Europe, spent 18 years there, man.
That's wild. I mean, what I don't know about you, I could just about squeeze into the Grand Canyon, Chris. You know that?
Yeah, I lived in Spain 18 years, but during that time I was based in Spain. I was in England for 1 year and Ireland for almost 2 years. And yeah, good times over there. Yeah, I was just looking at a map of northern Italy today, the mountains there. I've never been there. Never will go there now.
Well, World War COVID will have to morph into something because these patterns only go for so long, usually.
I'm not counting it on it happening in our lifetime, but it might.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, especially as someone who gambles,
Yeah.
called investments.
Yeah, crypto investor. Give me financial. I would like some financial advice, Darrell.
Okay.
And I need medical advice. I need financial advice for the record.
Good.
Recording.
Yeah, and that's part of my mission statement is I increase abundance and decrease scarcity by working to help increase my own and other people's mental and emotional and financial health.
I like it.
And physical health too. So all of that. Yeah. Here's the simple one. Just set up with maybe at least one app at a time. Like Cash App is a simple one, and have it always continuously buy you some crypto. That's a fast one. You can do that with many of the major exchanges, but just have it. So for myself, I use bitflyer.com, and I just have it. It always buys me $15 worth of Bitcoin every week, which is about the price of a disappointing meal that I often find out, man, I really wish I did not pay for that.
I'm going to introduce you. Hey, everybody, Darrell Becker.
Yeah.
Good.
And
All right. So,
man,
Darrell, you are our favorite, in-house holistic medical practitioner. You stick people with needles. Do they scream in pain when you do that?
nope. It's very common here in the United States and probably everywhere at this point. People like painless acupuncture, and it's not hard to provide.
You ever get anybody having a panic attack just because it's psychological? They know needles are going in them. I know I would.
Mostly people just like love to micromanage the professional who's trying to help them. Isn't that a common trait? They come there for help, and then they think that for some reason, they have the actual capacity to understand what the whole processes involve. And then, obviously though, most people are experimental when they're coming to me. They mean they have a lot of problems usually that they have not solved. So they're open-minded to start with, but then they might have a bad experience here and there with a thing. Like, for example, I use electrostimulating devices, specifically Skinar, that's Russian electrotherapy devices. And stepping it up slowly, even with an electrotherapy device, can be very jolting, even if you're going slowly.
Pun intended.
Totally intended. Because like, if you're not ready for it, and you have to mentally be ready for it, emotionally be ready for it. And if someone just happens to not be ready for it, because again, they're kind of embracing the habits of being a coward, and that's their trip. My job is to meet them wherever the hell they're at. Their job is to be authentic and give me some feedback so I can help them like that. And
I'll keep that in mind next time I go to the chiropractor or the acupuncturist.
Yeah.
Or any other holistic.
You're working with them. So like some people, like they're like, I had a bad experience, so I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm like, really? Okay. And I did that one time for a client where like literally the whole time I was only using electrostimulating therapy devices, no needles at all, because he had a bad experience. And then I was like, that bad experience was someone else a long time ago. Are you ready to try again? Because it can be completely different and painless. I know how to make this painless, right? And it's like, okay, so we give it a try. And that's like an open-minded approach to it. But meeting people wherever they are, how about this? Meeting the client wherever they're at is an opportunity. Working for them is an opportunity, hopefully voluntary, right? So you're just working with them wherever the hell they're at. Obviously, I love the people who give me carte blanche to do whatever I want just to get to the results. They give me the feedback on what's going on for them. That's very nice and simple. My preference like that. And there's a lot of different therapies that are nicely available, including especially the medicine. And, then there's the folks who just got loaded up with too many pills, and then they had a bad experience. So now they go away from that. I'm looking forward to, more and more of the open-minded work with me kind of clients, and especially like those who are self-involved in their own healing process. The more they're involved in that, the better. It starts with up there like that. The thoughts that you keep having. I can't ever lose weight. Without getting an eating disorder. I can't ever get off of these, what is it called? Antidepressant drugs.
Opiates.
Yeah, rarely do I see that one. Most of those people I don't get to see, but I have helped people get off of the opiates and off of the psych drugs before. Those are the psych drugs are the worst, my opinion.
Do you ever get many sports injuries?
Of course.
Yeah.
For a brief period of time, and then they're done, because the athletes are kind of sometimes one and done kind of treatments.
Yeah.
So like that.
I asked that because the only person I've ever known that's gone to an acupuncturist was my old boss in Spain. He was an Irish guy, but he messed his wrist up and he went to one and he was happy. And that was my first introduction. I'd heard of it before, but that was my first close, proximity to someone who had it before. And it made me think, maybe I would try that one day if I needed it.
So when are you going to try it?
Well, I don't have any, actually, my problem now is more of a chiropractor thing. I've got I've got bad posture, bad lower back. Speaking of which, did you ever meet our mutual friend that we met there? She's in Hawaii. Did you ever get in touch with her? A chiropractor?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
But wait a second. Can you say her name though?
Nicole.
Yeah, I mean, I think I reached out to Nicole. She was moving to this island, and I was not aware that she was a chiropractor.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. She is.
uh,
I think she wasn't Nicole a chiropractor. Yeah, she was a chiropractor. Yeah, she was
okay.
Jim and Beth's friend. Yeah.
Oh, Judy. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but we all
So
hung out at Red Pill in South Dakota. It was pretty cool. She was there of her own accord, freedom-minded person in the whole holistic medicine. So naturally, your name came up. Oh, you're in Hawaii. Well, we know someone there.
yeah,
That's what it's all about. I was talking to Mike today about community and circle starting to overlap, and just because freedom's a good thing, and inevitably it's going to grow, and people are going to start combining their resources because there's a lot going on. Good. This is great. I was trying to introduce you. We didn't even get past the acupuncturist part. So what else are you? You're a podcaster. You've got not medical advice, your own show as well on YouTube, and you're a frequent guest on many podcasts. Have you been on School Sucks podcast lately? You're always on there. It seems like you and Brett Venat have always got some project going on.
I did one last show with Brad, and Tony Myers was on that one.
Tony,
And,
yeah, he's killing it with Grand Theft World, hosting that with Richard Grove right now.
Yeah, I highly recommend that you actually listen to that show. I think that's interesting. I don't know about my own performance, but mostly I just tried to show up with being lots of patience, basically, because to be blunt about it, Tony interrupted me a lot. I didn't get to really finish what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
and he kind of took over a lot like that. I have to say, like, I have a high value for open-minded investigation into things. I think the person who makes the positive claim bears the onus of proof on that claim. And I think it's very disingenuous to make a claim and not be ready to support it like that. If you say that viruses have been isolated and purified and demonstrated as a purified isolate to cause disease, then I want to see the evidence for that claim. I want to see that evidence for it,
I did hear that episode because Brett was kind of moderating in between, wasn't he?
Barely. I mean,
if I remember correctly.
To be generous with Brett, as far as moderating would be, Tony, I think it'd be good for you to be quiet while Darrell is talking. That's moderating, okay? Or, like, how about we can, I'll set a timer. Darrell gets a whole 120 seconds to respond to something. 120 seconds. You can use pen and paper in between and capture whatever it is that's important to you to respond to, and like that. But I just sort of let it go, and I kind of.
Have you elaborated the conversation since then, even behind the scenes, because that's one of my questions for you. Since the last time we spoke,
Tony, like, hey,
there is no.
We can have
the last time we spoke, there's no. The virus has. I was going to ask you, has there any update since we last spoke? Has that magic study appeared isolating the virus? I don't know.
No, and you're not going to find it because it doesn't work that way. Is most like, if I'm going with Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is the most likely one without requiring elaborate magical situations. Most all of what's known as virology is incredibly fraudulent, as many virologists are stepping forward to say. They're just like, lots of them are stepping forward to say, and other doctors and scientists are also stepping forward to say such too. Microbiologists are stepping up to say. I think you might remember a rash of microbiologists all showing up dead back in the 90s and things like that. There was a rash of certain people, professionals, who were getting killed. You can look that up.
That's insane. No, I didn't know about that. I know there was a rash of holistic doctors that were disappeared, but that was more recent. Seems like in the last 5 years or so.
There are phases of this thing that happens like that. Okay. And certainly Carrie Mullis's death by, quote, pneumonia, it right in 2019 was kind of obscenely convenient. I would say likely, again, that's another very well covered up murder, probably, but I don't really know, of course, because I mean, I'm just guessing on what's the simplest explanation. No, the reason you can't find, like, purification isolation studies and then a further study using the isolate and purified virus matter to actually introduced with natural means. That's like with breathing and skin and eating, like that kind of thing. It needs to have like turn a healthy organism sick using that. And if you had to, it would be like purely the isolate being injected, but obviously that does not show contagion at all. If you have to inject it, that's kind of not that's the opposite of what's contagious, allegedly. I think what would happen is the entire bubble, as I'm realizing, of that bacteria and viruses are contagious things would pop. And that's a many $trillion investment that's going on, that's still making tons and pumping out tons. Not until they're ready to flush that whole paradigm will they actually cop to that one. It's the same thing as that they kept using mercury and silver and heavy metals in people's teeth up until more recently, and quietly start to replace that with epoxies called composite. And the reason, of course, is that they can't cop to that they've just literally poisoned lots and lots of people, causing untold amounts of death and disease, and actually having to pay for it. Well, this is the same exact thing. Certainly not a victimless crime like your shirt. This is a full-on victim crime.
Yeah.
So until I see evidence otherwise, what are called viruses seem to be cell waste that are blamed irresponsibly on symptoms of cell death, when in actuality, that's part of what happens when cells die or are sick, is that they have to compartmentalize using their available membranes to like the same way as we use garbage bags. And like with a lot of garbage, like around a crack house, you have a lot of garbage bags like suddenly popping out of the whole place. Well, of course, because they're freaking irresponsible and making lots of garbage. That's what they do. That they make tons of garbage. Poor people make tons of garbage. Rich people, not as much. That's the way it works. And the same way with cells. A healthy cell makes less exosomes, or basically compartmentalized cell bundled waste, which are then erroneously called viruses. And just like a plastic bag around garbage is going to take on the shape of what's in it, well, that's why you have all these different shaped viruses, like that, because the cell membrane is around that shit, that whatever waste, toxins, all kinds of stuff. If you open the things up as they do, they find out, lo and behold, there's nothing to create it, to make it reproduce. There's no like of the like metabolism, respiration, turning like particles into more of itself and reproducing, that kind of thing. There's nothing of life in it because it's wrapped up cell waste. And as far as I can tell, Chris, this has been known for a long time by those in the know, but it was way more profitable for them to pump up the story of otherwise. So when I have reached out to people independently to say, hey, do you want to have a discussion about that? And I did to Tony for sure. He said, no, I'm not interested in this topic anymore. And you're just going to pick your experts and I'll pick mine. And that's the way it is, and case closed. It's very close-minded. I think that I like to say I am open-minded. If you can show me evidence, actual something, I'm ready to change my mind. Usually people bring up, well, I know from my own anecdotal experiences that I got sick around so-and-so, so therefore that proves that viruses are real.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Where do you want to start with that one, Chris?
I wanted to ask you about that. What is your take on that? The whole chickenpox party thing. If someone playing the devil's advocate, how do you explain that?
This is the kind of thing where now I want to redirect you to our Discord channel for Content Safe, where I put that perfect little meme right there, just really close back, and like go right to Discord, Chris.
I'm definitely going to put it in the show notes.
But let's bring it up on the freaking screen here. Give me screen sharing ability. Let me bring it up and I'll talk about it. I
love it. Let's do it.
That's kind of important. It's only 3 steps to understand this, but a picture's worth 1,000 words, so like that. I'll go to.
I want to ask you, I don't know if it's related or not, but things like yawning is contagious or not? I mean, is that completely like psychosomatic? You see someone yawn and then you yawn, what's that about? I don't know.
Well, I think that there's a lot of psychosomatic, as you just mentioned, things going on here. This is a little bit small, but
dude, yeah, you just put that up the other day and I actually did not look at it.
I've been thinking about the psychology of this stuff, Chris, and this stuff is insidious. Okay. What I'm trying to say is a lot of people if you're going to be exposed to information that would require that you actually change your habits, if you were to be aware of it, what you're going to do is you're going to compartmentalize it unconsciously and try not to be aware of it and move on from it. Okay. Because
So
here
we've
you have
got-
a simple thing that shows the 3 causes of disease, including the whole chickenpox party right there. Basically,
Can
we
you
have
hit
3
open
things causing it.
original and make it bigger? I remember the first I heard of deficiency and toxicity was a documentary called The Wonderful Truth. No, yeah, was it The Wonderful Truth? And it was about the Gerson therapy. Did you ever see that documentary?
Yeah, I've actually watched that one and given
Yeah,
it away
about
to
the
people.
kid. It was the teenager, and it was his project, and he his studies led him to that. And I remember in the very beginning of the documentary, he was writing toxicity and deficiency, but the third one, then we've got psychological damage. All right, cool.
So
Darrell, take us through this.
it's really very simple. A lot of what's called I'm getting sick from a virus or a bacteria is actually the body has gotten toxins in. I would be getting up and grabbing various books on the topic. One of them is called The 100-Year Lie, to describe exactly the scope of toxins that have happened in the 20th and 21st century. It's a humongous amount of specialized toxins that our bodies are in no way designed or to handle. So what it does, what it knows how to do, it creates shivering and sneezing and raises the temperature, and it tries to get us to make lots of mucus, to increase sweating, to increase peeing and pooping, it tries to get stuff out. That's what it does, and it will react that way, and it's going to consistently, the bodies will keep doing that, and that includes, of course, the electromagnetic poisons that are happening too, like all the frequencies that I'm being exposed to just by doing this call.
This is excellent. This is something I've often theorized myself. Like when you actually get sick, that's just your body detoxing. That's what my wife and I will tell ourselves. Oh, I've got a sneeze, I've got a fever. Great.
Yeah, so that's one aspect of it, but there's more, of course, that there's the actual deficiencies going on. There are nutrients that need to be there, and if they're not there, well, then now there's going to be deficiency disease. People tried to blame things like freaking rickets and beriberi on viruses until they had to admit that those were nutritional deficiencies, beriberi being a B vitamin deficiency, and rickets being a vitamin D deficiency.
Vitamin D,
which of course could only happen in the fucking frozen north, where people have periods of time where they're actually not exposed to the real sun, or if they're one of those kind of messed up individuals who always avoid the sun, like that.
There's a lot.
And why
because of modern day
I don't know.
propaganda, again, that's another facet of the war against humanity. Oh, wear sunscreen, don't get in the sun. Yeah, a lot more of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's very elegant in its simplicity to understand the terrain model of health and disease. And this was the 3 major components of it. What's called the nocebo effect, that you think you're going to get sick because you're around so-and-so who is sick, is a great way of getting sick, in the same way as I'm going to be successful because I just got an excellent, bunch of help from a really great copywriter and marketer. So I know I'm going to be successful because of that. And then lo and behold, you are, because part of your mind is creating that event. And in the same way, part of your mind is ready to create sickness and indeed death. Same thing as what happened to all the people who received an AIDS infection diagnosis back in the 80s and 90s. Some of them died with minimal actual toxic medicines applied to them. They or none at all even. They just literally could just give up on being alive, like that. And they would be labeled, of course, like as an AIDS death back then. Very similar to what's going on right now. That was kind of like practice for what the World War COVID event.
Wasn't the AIDS victim, wasn't it mainly, it was the cure that killed most of them in the end?
Yeah, the treatments rather, specifically AZT to start with, nevirapine later on, and then a whole host of them. What happened was they marketed it now less toxic preparations, where people can take the new AIDS drugs for way longer without dying, and all of it being completely unnecessary, all of it based on completely fraudulent tests similar to the PCR test used right now for COVID is the bullshit Western blot test and the ELISA test that were and unfortunately still are used for AIDS. The same exact thing. If you looked into medical malfeasance and like how, you know, this industry was designed to create unhealthy people, it's all about what we got here on the screen. These symptoms are the body's description of what it's doing to detox itself. And some symptoms are going to be, you know, showing what the body needs more nutrients in as well. Like that. It's really pretty elegant and simple. And then here's the other bigger problem. I'm gonna stop sharing at this point. Chris, why do people want to be considering themselves way more competent to self-diagnose and to come up with a clear answer for what's going on than they actually are? Why do people want to believe that I got the COVID because I lost my sense of taste and smell, so I know for sure? And the answer I have is because they're full on Dunning-Kruger effect. They build their self-esteem on wanting to be more competent than they actually are in a variety of things. Because to acknowledge their lack of competence and uncertainty would be scary, and it would be actually like against them in some way. So just like, I'm going to guess you're probably going to forget this part of the show because you're going to want to remain competent in your mind more than you actually are. Unless, Chris, you and the other listeners choose to change and embrace uncertainty and actually understand the difference between an accurate diagnosis, medically speaking, and a bullshit piece of fucking crap diagnosis that is passing not just from other people who just diagnose themselves, but from professionals. Here, I'll give you, it's very simple. If your diagnosis does not include all of the specific and precise causal vectors causing the disease in the specific person,
Yeah.
if you don't include the major ones at all, the causes, root causes, toxicity specifically, deficiency specifically, then fuck you, you suck at self-diagnosing, and go home, go get a professional, hire a real person who knows. We find the real actual situations that cause the disease. You are deficient here. I can measure it in my office here. You are toxic in this way. I can measure it. Let me show you. Now, obviously, I love to have labs run and things to verify. And that's wonderful when people can get that done. But you have to have the right labs done, you know, and you need to, and anyone can read a damn lab. Don't think you need a professional to read a lab. There's whole websites that help you read whatever lab you've got, you know, like, my God, you know, to start with, you need to
There's
see
a bit
causes.
of a synchronicity right there, because I just had some blood work done yesterday and they sent my results back on the website, and I was going through there and there was only one irregularity. So I looked it up and I thought, yeah, that's normal because my ketone was high. And because, and of course the official, if you go to Google, say, oh, diabetics, this is dangerous for diabetics, or someone's practicing a low carb diet. I said, that would be me.
Exactly. So you understand that. I think that the thing about it is that many people have embraced certainty because it's part of their religious heritage. I grew up with two atheist parents, so it helped me embrace uncertainty. I eventually, learned to become agnostic because I can't even define what the hell people are talking about with God until
you and I, we've been down the same path then. Yeah, Darrell. Yeah. See there, I used to say I was atheist, but now I definitely say I'm agnostic because, you both, like, as you know, I don't know. How do I know for sure? I don't know. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time in my life trying to figure it out. I'm just going to get on with it. Maybe there is a God in Jesus Christ. Maybe there isn't, but we're never going to know in our lifetime for sure.
Yeah, pure knowing is not going to happen. It's only a guess. So I'm going to try to, maybe for the listeners, let me give them a gift of some new way of operating, like an addition to your mental emotional operating system here. Let's just start over from fresh. Uncertainty, embrace it. Okay. Curiosity, lift that sucker up way high. Investigation at the grammar level, like all of as much research as you're willing and able to take, unless you're in urgency mode, and then I understand you have minimal time, then you're building some logical case for connecting the dots for things. And that involves knowing your logical fallacies. And then you're investigating experiments at the top. Either you create your own experiments, and that's the best way, or you're investigating experiments and you're seeing exactly how they were composed and what the results were. And then after all of that, you get to make your actionable choice. That's where you say, I have chosen a conclusion because I'm going to take action. And as soon as you've taken action, boom, you're right back to academic and questioning it again. And if you can't handle questioning things because you need certainty, you're religious. And if you can handle uncertainty, if you can handle that, you're a scientist, because you're always ready to rip things apart. If you have a claim, Chris, that you think you know for sure, the thing that you could do with that, like that's what I do with the vaccination issue in general, I've been doing that one for years, is periodically I'm going to audit that belief, that conclusion rather. It's not a belief, it's a conclusion, but it's my operant conclusion for the moment, to say no good will come from vaccines. They've got nothing good in them, and they're very likely extremely harmful. But I'm going to audit that, and I'm going to see what's the best that pro-vaccines got this year. Let me see what you got this year. I'll do that every once in a while, every year. Let me try to discredit or to undermine this conclusion, the operant conclusion I have. Vaccinations are full of toxins and are in no way helpful at all, are very likely harmful. Let me go the opposite way. What's the evidence to support that they are safe? What's the evidence that they are helpful? And I look at the evidence, and once again, totally anecdotal, always, never really supported of much at all. And yeah, I'm ready to start again. And maybe the day will come where someone invented one that was actually tested in the proper way. Like I said, they started with an isolated pathogen where they showed antibodies having a bigger impact on health than obviously many other aspects of what people call the immune system, which, by the way, there's no such thing as the immune system. I had to learn that one last year too. There's no fucking such thing. There's only just the body's metabolism as it metabolizes both nutrients and toxins.
And this is where the white blood cells come in, or no?
They're going to come in to deal with things that are not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And that does also include toxins.
Cool.
So for the most part, the bacteria are already endemic. They're already there. The bacteria overgrow.
You mean the bad bacteria or the good bacteria, or both?
They're all good bacteria. That's the thing. Strep and staph are in our body. They're in there.
Never thought of it that way. Yeah.
They're built in. In fact, you get rid of them, you're going to die. Okay.
So when we get strep throat, is that just too much? It's just too much of that bacteria.
It's growing over to try to stimulate the area to get more blood and energy to the area, to try to, and phlegm and things like that, to try to get this stuff out. It's trying to clean it up, basically. Unfortunately, it will cause a problem, because it's like, as it's causing inflammation, as it's like, more blood to the area, and it's now inflammation. Now we have like literally forms of friction where like things are now dysfunctional. So you can temporarily get relief by killing all of the bacteria in that area, or systemically, temporarily, at a big cost, because you're also going to be killing off the gut biota, which is needed for actually making nutrients of kinds and absorbing other nutrients as well. So that will have to be handled, after taking antibiotics. But, if you imagine, Chris, that if the bacterial overload in some area, say like the skull and around the brain and in the brain, is causing a swelling of the tissue, well, the brain can't afford to swell for very much. That's called, encephalitis, basically. That you can't afford that. So that is where you have the life-saving ability of kill all the bacteria. Now the inflammation has gone down. That's why it was such an awesome medicine like that. I'm not against using the medicines that are effective, but my God, you need to know what the fuck you're doing. And that's an example of knowing what the fuck you're doing, where you just basically are decimating the bacteria, which were there in a balanced situation. They're there to increase the blood supply, to actually literally eat up and destroy components of waste and dead cells and remove them like garbage men, like that. That's mostly what they're there to do. And I didn't really fully see this pattern, even though I've had books on this subject for like years. I didn't really come into this until last year's investigation, because I was, infectious disease was just not a thing as much for me back before last year.
Yeah.
I mean, I did a little bit in it, but like it seemed like the herbs and the formulas I was using were very effective, and it seemed like it worked. So I put aside the terrain theory, even though I was very fully aware of it from my beginning training 20 years ago. But I didn't fully embrace the terrain theory until just last year, you know.
That's interesting. I had never heard of it myself. It was before COVID. My wife was very interested in this topic, and she was the one, I believe, who originally was talking to me about it. And then, of course, when COVID hit, my discussions with you and your interview with Dr. Melissa Sell was very good on that topic. And it's just a hot topic. You hear about it. I was going to say, though, do you remember a guy named Jonathan Landsman? Did you ever know who he was? He was originally working with Natural News back when Natural News was had some interesting things to say. But it was from him, I believe. He kept saying it's all about the terrain. It's all about the terrain. And I didn't know what he was talking about then. So I guess technically going back about 6 or 7 years, that's when I first heard of it. So the reason, why do you think terrain theory is something that nobody ever heard of up until recently? You know, was that something that was not meant to get out? Is it something that is actually the way it is and they don't want people to know that? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they wanted to pump up the germ theory of disease, and they wanted to make sure that from, you know, Antoine Béchamp forward, that no one would even know who Béchamp is, but everyone would know who Pasteur is by putting his name on people's milk. And they made very sure that they backed the one that would make the most money for the Rockefeller medicine industry. And they won in that way. They won trillions of dollars at this point. It's pretty
and I
simple.
will, anyone listening, I will refer them. I'll link in. Corbett did a very good episode on that about how the Rockefellers basically manipulated the whole system to move the whole system into an allopathic road, to take it down the allopathic route, and then just basically waged war on all the actual medical practitioners.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, there's the Flexner report. You listeners and viewers, you can look that up. Look up the
I'll
Flexner
check that
report.
out. What's it called?
Flexner report.
Like
and I'll try to link it up in here.
FLEXNER, Flexner.
NOR, I think, but
okay, I'll definitely add that in. What's that about?
It's giving the backstory of how this all came about, where basically to impugn the efficacy or, you know, effectiveness and safety of various holistic healthcare providers, including chiropractors of the time, and to try to pump up the new monopoly called, you know, the American Medical Association and all of their other alphabet soup agencies like the Food and Drug Administration, etc. Now we have the Center for Disease Control and the World Health Organization. They all say the same thing and they all walk in lockstep. And it's that kind of thing that I find so amazing with people nowadays. Like, I'm living in that post-evidence world where people, they are religious about their topic. They would rather honestly die, seemingly, than ever acknowledge that they even the smidgen of could be wrong about this. They like to just go to their qualified experts and just take their say-so on it and say, oh yeah, I've read, like I've looked at you know, everything that Kaufman said and Andrew Kaufman said, and he's wrong, or I've looked at everything like that. And I'm like, God, I haven't looked at everything they've had. I certainly couldn't say it's wrong. I don't know where you're getting that from.
Yeah.
Most people who say that, they don't really want a nuanced, open-minded debate where, once again, the onus is on them to demonstrate the, you know, the burden of proof of whatever their claim is, germ theory wise, in terms of that. I think that most people would rather die than acknowledge that they could be really so in error. And the more decades old you are, the worse that tends to be, the lower the humility factor. This is why I don't have a lot of friends who are older than me, is because it's very rare that I've come across like a G. Edward Griffin who's filled with curiosity and humility and can realize he could get stuff wrong like that. That's like rare. Most of them are, you know, obedient and conformist, and self-reflectively, philosophically, they're very apathetic. They would rather just say that a set of symptoms, lack of smell, lack of taste, feeling sick, having to stay in bed equals I've got the Rona.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Awesome self-diagnosis. Now, a set of symptoms does not equal a diagnosis if you're in medicine for real. If you're in medicine for fake, and that includes if you have an MD out there, if you're in medicine for fake, you have a practice of setting up symptoms and calling that with a name diagnosis. That's not how diagnosis works. Diagnosis means causal vectors specific to the individual. So someone who lost their sense of smell and taste, very likely they had toxins going in them that their body was just not efficient at removing. And that does include electromagnetic toxins, which you can take a fast from, you can take some time off of. And that does include various types of things. People don't even realize, did you look at your shampoo? Did you look and see how many toxins are in your shampoo that you're putting on your fucking head every day?
The Teflon in the Teflon in your frying pan. For example,
most people, you start to become aware of one
plastic bottle you're drinking from.
Yeah, like at some point, like you're gonna cross the line to say, okay, I am fully aware of the toxins I'm bringing into my body, because now I'm a medical professional and now I know. And so now when I get sick, I know exactly how I did it, and therefore I know how to undo it.
What you're talking about reminds me of something Mark Passio has often said is one of the worst characteristics a person can have in their personal and spiritual growth is the attachment to the id, the inability to say, I was wrong. And that's it.
That's a humility deficiency right there. Yeah. And that's an obstacle. Like I like to stay, like I want to stay open-minded and obviously more emotionally in balance on things. And just to obviously, say, okay, I'm going to acknowledge that every 80 years, this type of tragedy is really common. People go on the witch hunt. They are religious in a fervor, and like that. And they divide into their little units of tribes like that. And obviously there is a tribe that I'm more happy to be amongst right now. And that's just the way it is. And people are going to be on the other side and embrace it. I'm going to wish to find, how do I build a bridge to them like that? If I want to. I had a client where there was, thousands of dollars involved, and I made that choice of, all right, I'm going to deal with them. God, I hate dealing with them. And it wasn't that bad, because now this dude's all vaccinated and wasn't all afraid to meet with me and everything like that, because he thinks he's got like the magic bullet that helps him. It's religious. So if I'm around religious people, and certainly you'd understand this in Texas, I'm kind of like finding out, like, to what degree am I going to flow with this, right?
The religion here is it's the same, but it's different. The religion you're around there in Hawaii is more of the belief in government, whereas around here it's more of the belief in one omnipotent man in the sky.
Right.
And of course, in
also,
reference to
Jesus.
the COVID religion, that is a very universal religion at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, just kind of being aware of like the other person and where am I meeting them at? And also, like getting things done by David Allen. I do a simplified version of that in my head because he's got like a 5-step version, and yeah, it should be right behind you.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
But more important, Darrell, I've got his flow chart. I've recently moved location. It's still in the studio out there, but I've got it on the wall. Is it actionable? Yes or no? And, his flow chart, that has helped me a lot. David Allen, Getting Things Done, fantastic book. I'll recommend anyone listening who, if you haven't heard of it. Yeah.
Here, I'll give you a 3-step version of it instead. So the 3-step is, what are my objectives right now with talking to this person? If I'm like talking to this person or taking, or whatever the activity is, but usually I keep in mind when I'm trying to maintain emotional and mental balance around a person, what are my objectives? Like to make a good show for Truth Conduit, what are the actions that I'm going to take to make sure that I get to those objectives? I'm going to try to do that. I'll show up prepared and on time, and I'll try to, what can I say? Shoot from the hip and play it easy, because that's how it goes here, Truth Conduit, And then what are the resources that I need to take those actions to get to my objectives? 3 steps. The resources I needed the time. I cleared up the time. I needed to be well fed ahead of time, and just a little minimal setup like this, because this is obviously not my final form of my studio.
You had a
'Cause
visitor earlier. One of your friends walked past your glass door. Yeah.
I saw that rooster over there. Yeah, that was something. That was yeah.
Yeah, that's an easier. Yeah, why am I doing this? And I often ask myself, am I investing my time or am I wasting my time? And not to say wasting your time is a bad thing. Sometimes we need to waste our time in order to kind of relax and disconnect and reset ourselves. It's a waste of time if you've got 1,000 things to do and you're experiencing analysis by paralysis. That's a obstacle I often face, because if I hadn't planned the day and I'm sitting there and suddenly I've got time, I got 1,000 things to do and I don't know where to direct my energy. Boom, that's where I start to go. It gets out of control. That happens to me a lot. Have you seen Brett or talked to him lately? I know he's been busy changing projects, hasn't he?
Yeah. Well, I'm in a mastermind with him every week. So
Oh, you traitor.
every
Dude.
week.
You're in a mastermind with me as well. Dude, how many masterminds are you in?
At about 3. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in 3 of them right now. And yeah, like that's the first one that I ever went in, is the one with Brett and Nathan and Drew Samples in that one. Yeah, it's
Nathan
it's a
Fraser,
really good one.
you mean?
Nathan Fraser, yes.
Yeah.
He's the one who brought us all together, basically. It's his.
Okay.
Yeah. He was the one to start that format of, beating up and weekly wins, and then accountability from last week, and then the tooltip, a trick, and then your pain point and advice and action of accountability, and we're done. 1 hour, like that.
Who
That's
was
the
it that
format.
invented the mastermind concept? Was it
Napoleon Hill made it famous.
That's
Yeah.
it.
So Think and Grow Rich should be right over there. Hopefully you have Outwitting the Devil. That's an even better book.
It's behind me. In fact, I am
Sweet.
3/4 of the way through the book. I admit I haven't been reading it. I was listening to the audio of it and I was about halfway through it. Fantastic stuff. But yeah, Napoleon Hill invented the concept of the mastermind.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I get to hear from what Brett is working on. Like, he's going to be in the hot seat next week, so that'll be something, like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, his show, School Sucks Project, was very influential on me over the years, especially homeschooling and going down that road. And I got to a point, once I caught on to his work, I just started with episode 1 and started making my way through it. And a lot of value there. I do recommend School Sucks Project, even though technically it's finished now, isn't it? But all the old episodes are there. Yeah, I don't know what he's been up to.
Yeah. Well, he has been putting out some last bit of content for his show. And actually, for the full-on rebranding and pivot, I'm still waiting, just like everyone, to see what and when.
Okay, so he hasn't taken that into the next step yet. I haven't been keeping up in a few months.
No.
Okay.
No,
Yeah, cool.
As soon as that happens, I'll be really interested to know, and I'll probably mention it when we're in our meeting on Mondays, but yeah, I'm curious to see how that goes. No, he's kind of floating nicely, I would say, he just put out another show today, so I was just listening to that one. Kind of a bunch of discomfort zone. He still is, of course, on the Portman show with his friends Andrew and such, and they do good stuff like that.
That's good.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Have you been on Ricky's show yet?
Not yet. I want to be.
We need to get on there, man. We're the only 2 people that I think you and I need to be on there. We should be. I know Ricky. I should send him a message. Say, dude, I've had him on this show before.
Oh, cool.
But
maybe that's the way to get on his show, is I need to get him on mine.
Yeah. I mean, anybody who's anybody in the alt media freedom minded universe will be on his what's his Monday show? The Union of the Unwanted. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Matt just did that yesterday. I'm looking forward to listening to that one.
Yeah, of course, Matt's on it like every week.
I know Matt got really tight with him and also, that's a good thing. And I understand he performs well on the show. That's a good thing.
What
Sometimes
speaking of
it's like
Matt,
that.
Darrell, I know the last time we spoke, and I've got a whole episode with Matt Raymer on content safe, but it's been a while since we've talked about it. Just for anyone listening who hasn't heard of it, content safe. That's another thing that you are involved in very much. It's a serious solution for content creators. It's growing, isn't it? I mean, you want to update people on basic introduction, what it is, and who could benefit.
Content Safe is a video distribution company. What we get our clients who make videos, especially if they're going up on YouTube, and get them instantly up on BitChute and Odyssey and Rumble and Float, Brighteon, DTube, D-Link, etc. We got a lot of options to get people up on, and we help people grow an audience, getting more eyes and ears on their work. We help people to deal with the problems of being shadow banned and censored over on YouTube. And
And
more
you
eyes
guys
and ears
also
on your
put it
work.
on the interplanetary file sharing system as well, don't you?
Yeah, that's a service that is available. That's like a bit more of a bulletproof place where, you know, once the files are on IPFS, interplanetary file systems, they tend to stay there. And so we make that accessible to content providers. I'm co-owner with Matt Raymer of Content Safe, and I do the marketing and sales outreach. That's why I'm in a sales meeting with you every single week. And yeah, we've got growing it up there. Where we just met and trying to close with Ernie Hancock and Declare Your Independence. We're trying to, you know, hopefully he'll help us bring in a lot more people. But yeah, we're getting there to that point where once we get our first 50 people that we're serving, and these are like lifetime clients that we serve for like $1,000 and get them on 5 platforms, well, then that'll be the seed money necessary without needing to, you know, go to investors to just do a hard launch. And then obviously everyone else, they'll have to have, you know, pay by the monthly. But
That's
if
amazing. Yeah.
you ever try to upload to BitChute on your own?
Oh my God, I've tried and
Oh
failed.
my God.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
You hear that in the voice of Chris McMillan, who's not a technical slouch, because, you know,
Yeah.
obviously you've been podcasting for a while, and yet
It'll
you
just
try to
sit there.
upload it.
Yeah, it's
And yes,
impossible.
yeah, well, at Content Safe, we get it up there on BitChute and we grow your channel there. And the same on Odyssey, which is extremely large. So if you haven't heard of Odyssey yet, but you have heard of BitChute, it's really growing in massive competition to BitChute. And the
Yeah,
purpose
I
is, of
definitely
course,
prefer Odyssey to BitChute.
oh, it's more
Myself, you
fun.
know, Odyssey is awesome. Yeah, I've got an
Yeah, it's
Odyssey
more
channel,
fun.
and it's good. Yeah, I don't know.
The general gist of it is, if you got a show out there and you want more people to be checking it out so that they could be converted into potentially paying clients, you want to be automatically up on these other platforms. That's growing more attention. That's more eyes and ears on your work. And back in the day, people knew of a thing called Hootsuite. That's where you could just make your social media thing, that whatever your post was, and it's instantly going to go out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Boom, done with one shot. Well, we're kind of like that for the alt media platforms, which are hard to get onto, as you noticed with BitChute, for example. You know, it's not that simple to consistently publish. You have to have your media team has to like struggle to do it sometimes. So we remove the struggle aspect, you know, upload once and have it published, boom, 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 all at once, like that. And that's money. So those are the 2 ways I try to get people to consider working with us. You're hungry for the money. Like, obviously you'd like to grow your attention and grow your audience. That's what we help people do. Or maybe you're also really pissed and sad and like kind of afraid of the censorship that's slammed down on you. One of our clients, his whole channel on YouTube is all removed. And to this day, we don't even know why. You know, it was nothing even contentious. It's not
It
like not
wasn't
medical advice. My channel's still there.
wasn't giving truth and freedom that because that'll get you banned.
Exactly. That's kind of all it takes nowadays. And people are starting to find out that shadow banning is real. Like my friend has only like 82,000 people checking out his ukulele videos. I'm pretty sure that that's suppressed. He's been like one of the biggest and like longest running ukulele training video sessions anywhere. This should have grown much more exponentially over these last 8 years at least. So that's shadow banning right there, and we could test for shadow banning, that we know how to do that. But more importantly, like dealing with it is what we really do, which is just getting published on the other platforms, growing the audience basically. And that's contentsafe.co in a nutshell.
How do you test to see if you're shadow banned or not?
Well, the simple way is where we set up accounts where that, then, set up a YouTube account and then start following you and click the bell icon like that, but set up a bunch of them and see, and then go ahead. And since you're controlling the YouTube account too, if you're working for a client, post a video and see if those alerts are happening. If the alerts are not happening, then that means you're shadow banned.
Very interesting. Yeah. What about Hawaii right now? You're, how you're in one of the most fascist states right now during this war against humanity takeover. What's life like right now at street level for you?
Well, the interesting thing is that there are 4 major islands here as far as human population goes. Okay. That means I'm sorry, Molokai, Lanai, and Niihau. I'm not counting you guys. Okay. so meaning like the population is too low, but the big island of Hawaii and Maui, Oahu, and Kauai are the major population centers. I'm on the big island, and it is such that almost every single store, with rare exception, a mask is required. And even if it wasn't, almost every single store, people are wearing them because you're going to feel weird if you're the only one without a mask. That's like conformity bias, that kind of thing. So that's part of the pain in the ass like that. There's a lot
What
of
about the
older
vaccine
people.
passports? Is there talk of that yet?
There certainly is talk of it, and there's a lot of pushback against it. There are protests here, as there are everywhere.
Really?
Stop that.
That's surprising.
There's
Pleasantly
lots of
surprising.
protests. Yeah, every Saturday pretty much there's at least one protest like going on. If not in Hilo, then also multiple ways like Pahoa nearby. There are much bigger protests over on Oahu. It seems like the whole lockdown thing hurts a lot harder on the other islands than it does here. It seems like people here have more of a country attitude because this is more of a country island. There's no big city of Honolulu here at all. There's only the big city of Hilo with its 47,000 people.
Where's Jim and Beth at?
city.
Are they on the big island?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should have known that, but okay.
Yeah, they live even further from Hilo than I do.
Okay.
They live further away and more in the country than I do. And yeah, that's it is an impact to have to wear masks and go into stores. That's
the real
something.
question is do you think it's ever going to be a reality that you won't be able to leave the island unless you have that vaccine passport? Will they?
I mean,
do you think they would actually trap people there or not let people go there without that?
I think that there'll be a push for it over and over again, and there's a push back against it over and over again. And I really honestly don't know which way that one will win. I know that once they, like as with all totalitarian regimes, once they gain ground and reduce, freedom and like obviously simultaneously reduce security, it's going to be hard fought to go against it. It could stay with inertia. That's why people take their shoes off at the airport, and whatever fucking belt and everything like that. Like, I mean, that once these things are instituted, there's a lot of inertia. That's like, I think there's a lot of normalcy bias. People just want to be, in like pretending that everything is way more okay than it actually is.
Which step was that with Yezanov? Who was it that J. Edward Griffin interviewed? And
Yuri Bezmenov.
Yuri Bezmenov. Yeah. Which step was it? The normalcy? That was the final step, wasn't it?
Well,
no.
Yes, that is normalcy. Is the final step. So, at first it was destabilization, and then it was demoralization, and then it's crisis, and then it's normalization.
Your memory's better than mine on that. Yeah, very good.
I studied by Bezmenov, so yeah.
Cool.
I'm glad you're asking the stuff that I know instead of the stuff I don't. But yeah, like that. Yuri Bezmenov really summed this up really well. I wish he hadn't Like I wish he had held on like G. Edward Griffin did, you know, like and saw like that there's a lot of beauty and joy to life. But he was actually able to succinctly lay out the problems of how useful idiots behave in en masse, that they just basically follow along with this pattern of being destabilized first. I'm sorry, being demoralized first, which is the process of accepting ideas that are counter to your own interests. That's demoralization. Destabilization is where now the people who were demoralized 20 years later are in power control. They're now able to actually institute measures, like the bureaucrats who are in control over here, and to a lesser degree where you are, you know, like that. They institute things that would be completely against everyone's self-interest, but because they got paid to do so and they were indoctrinated into it, they're okay with it. So now they create destabilization, which of course then 20 years later leads to the present day crisis. That leads to where the like now you have people who are clamoring for like daddy to hit them harder, like shoot them up with more booster
And there's
shots.
a lot of factors behind this, public education and the power of the mass media being the most prominent too, as to why people are accepting this so easily.
Yeah. So it goes in a pattern like that. And then of course, like once the crisis becomes stabilized after 20 years of crisis, people are just used to it, like the Afghanistan war for it's 20 years or so, you know, we're just used to like soldiers get flown over there and they come back in body bags, and that's the way it works. And then that's normalization, just making it normal basically. So if you didn't really, you know, I saw a meme just today, I think it was like, if you didn't get the whole 9/11 sham, then I'm not going to be able to explain this one to you, you know, because basically if you didn't get that one, you really are not going to get this one at all. You know, it's going to go woo right over your head like that. That's unfortunately the way, because again, people have Dunning-Kruger effect. They want to believe so badly that they're more intelligent and more competent. Actually, it's not about intelligence, it's about competence, that they're more competent to come with an actionable understanding of a situation than they actually are. And they're going along with the usual other biases like appeal to popularity and appeal to majority, all these appeals that they utilize, that basically your stack of logical fallacies, that's actually their operating system. That's like the way they are operating, you know.
Do you have nextdoor.com? Do you get that in Hawaii?
No, what's that?
It's a social media network, but it's local. It's literally your neighbors. It goes by your neighborhood. It's very clean cut. It's very controlled, a bit like its own, same people. You couldn't put any real information up there without it getting axed. But it's very interesting to get a slice of the few arguments that do break out are all what you just described, because you've got your normal Joe Schmoes out there around you, and it's one of the few places where arguments can trickle through. Like in my area, there was recently at a huge, the company's called L3 and it used to be Raytheon. But anyway, it's a big place, and they were actually going to do vaccine passport. They were debating the vaccine passports. And I thought, whoa, and they're even allowing that to be announced there. But anyway, the people arguing there were very basic. Oh, well, everyone knows, and this and that, all the fallacies you just pointed out. And I thought of that because it would be a good exercise in pointing out fallacies by going to nextdoor.com and finding any controversial topic, any arguments you can find. And it's a good exercise to go through, and because most people on there, I hate to say, their arguments are very weak. Just appeal. It's all appeal and emotion. There's no real set way to argue. I've never seen anyone who can actually argue on there and present. It's not a bad place if you want to sell your eggs or look for local people looking for things. It's actually pretty good. Don't expect to get any real truth or anything from nextdoor.com, but when that protest went on and the people, there were debates that turned out in the comments. Eventually they turned the comments off, but it was a good window for me to see who in my area was naughty and who was nice. And so it was very interesting. It was a bit revealing for me, and I took names. I took notes. because I
It's
need
good.
people in my area who I'm looking for people in my area geographically. There are a lot of people here, but we need more. And I think there's a lot of people out there still in the woodwork, and it's little tidbits like that kind of will bring them out of the woodwork. You know what I
think
mean?
that it's there are people who are of what I just simplistically label as religious. They just really want to believe, and they're firm. They're kind of, they got a very firm habit with being certain about things, and anything that goes uncertain, they have also a habit of being scared of or frustrated with, or it brings up other troubling emotions, such as depression is what they call it, a term that I hate. It means sadness, basically, like that. And those folks, they're deficient in courage. Usually they have habits of cowardice. Basically, that's just fixed habits of cowardice, fixed habits of reduced humility, the inability to acknowledge where error was made in the past in judgment, and it led to tragedy. Like Robin Williams was on a show once in Germany where he was just like, the host asked him, do you ever wonder why there aren't more funny people in Germany? And then Robin Williams quipped back, you ever think that maybe you killed them all? And and the host was literally like, without dropping a beat, said no. And like, literally meaning that she did not acknowledge. Now obviously the we part is like, no, like, obviously other people killed them all, that's true, but she didn't. And it's very likely that that's a component of it. If you really build your self-esteem on keeping the same conclusion, you're going to stay the same way. And so that's the major thing I find right there. I used to think if I could just help people upgrade their mental emotional operating system, that'd be great. Then I discovered people don't want to do that, because to do that would be to acknowledge that it's broken or deficient. And I'm going to have to sell it in a different way. I'm looking at this quote from William Drummond. Basically, he who will not reason is a bigot. He who cannot is a fool, and he who dares not is a slave.
Oh, I like
So,
that. Who was that?
Reason, it's a William Drummond quote.
William Drummond.
He who will not reason is a bigot. He who cannot is a fool, and he who dares not is a slave. So oftentimes I'm talking to people who just are not aware of what the process called reason is. Like I mentioned, the trivium method of critical thinking is a process. If you don't have a process, you don't effectively do the thing. If you don't have a process to build a house, you don't build a good house. You build a crappy one. With a process that's like methodological, you get to build a real house that stays for years and years, or obviously centuries, or even millennia, depending. But if you don't have the process, then you're just basically, you're a fool. You're missing the information. But if you choose not to reason, if you choose not to use reason in specific instances, like I know about the trivium method of critical thinking, but I'm not going to use this for discussion regarding the terrain theory, specific proof that shows that viruses cause disease, and evidence that chemtrails are actually just exhaust from the standard non-anomalous plane flights going over that just don't happen, that happen to be in normal distances or directions between cities and such, and locations. That's choosing to be a bigot, choosing to avoid the controversy of actually saying I could be wrong. Usually it's a behavior I expect to see in someone older than me. It's unsettling to see it in someone who's younger than me. Although, being 49, that's a lot of people.
You 49?
So, yeah.
You look younger, man.
I'm working on it.
When's the big 5-0? It's coming up.
May.
Okay, you still got a bit of time before life is over and that's it. You're dead.
I'm working on it. I got up to 76 push-ups in 73 sequends today.
That's pretty good, man. I'll be 48 next spring, so I'm not too far behind you.
We're young of mind. I try to think of it that way,
That last part you're talking about, the slavery part, it reminds me of the pronunciation of the word ignorance. And I love it. Pronounce it as ignorance. because
ignorance.
I mean,
to
ignorance, you could
willfully
argue,
ignore.
is the root of everything that is wrong right now.
Yeah, to willfully ignore. That's true. And like, yeah, I mean, because it was interesting, like that quote was like similar to the Cicero that I was looking for. There's nothing like a little Cicero. The wise are instructed by reason, average minds by experience, the stupid by necessity, and the brute by instinct.
Yeah, it's
And that
it's pretty much the same, isn't it? Say
it
that again.
is. That's why I put them together like that,
Gotcha.
because yeah, someone was trying to debate it because they did not understand that reason refers to, if it's Cicero saying that, reason is referring to a precise and specific methodology of critical thinking. It's not just pretending to wave your arms around and saying, I'm using logic, blah, this is called reasonable. Yeah. It's like, no, that's without a method, and that's not reason. Reason is adhering to a specific methodology and also having plural methodologies so you compare them in practical application. You know, that's why I collect critical thinking methods. I collect emotional balancing techniques.
Well, Darrell, speaking of critical thinking, have you checked out Daniel McCarthy's podcast, The History of Critical Thinking?
I really need to.
Oh, dude, you'll love it. You will love it. I mean, you know Daniel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. His you know, it kind of goes with his book.
Do you have the great books up there?
No. Oh, I do actually, but I haven't read them. I found them in a Goodwill for like $5. The whole they're in a, yeah. I know Daniel's. He does, you know, especially in the early days of autonomy. They had a Great Books of the Western World Club, and they had it going on. I know. It's an endeavor I need to take on. It starts with the first book, How to Read a Book. You know, the first one, Great Books of the Western World. Daniel is very much into that, but his podcast, and I'll link it as well. But the beginning of his podcast, now he's been doing a show with Alice, which is good fun. But he started, it was a 5-part series, and then he did episodes with Brett about it to flesh it out a bit. But he starts back at the very beginning. I go all the way back to Plato, I believe. History of Critical Thinking. Very interesting. I think you would love it. And anyone listening, I'll definitely include it.
It makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I wanted to check it out. I think in the last episode, Brett was just published today, that Danny's in that one. So I'm curious to hear what he's got to say. But yeah, there's a lot of wisdom that can be had with an open mind. I think that in general, once I know who's in front of me, I can figure out what my objectives are, which usually is just some type of harmonious interaction. I mean, and that goes everything from when I'm going into a store, and around here, that's unfortunately like putting on mask, or in some cases double mask, because the kind that I use just to show them off are fakemaskusa.com. Look like this, you know, kind of look like that.
That's so ridiculous. And that's accepted.
And this is accepted in a lot of stores, but when it's not accepted, then I go in like that. And now I look like them.
Yeah.
But they can't tell, because you can't even tell, right? That you can't, it looks like it's extremely breathable. I mean, like I'm holding it up like that.
Yeah, I can see you through it.
Breathable. And so the point is, I like comfort. My objective is comfort and breathing and not being restricted. But I don't like being given a stupid look, and I don't like having to get a talking to from someone. So in a couple stores, I'll do the double mask like that, still breathable. And then in like obviously somewhere else, you know, like where like a normal store, or even the bank, even just the one mask is all that's necessary, because they're not mask Nazis, you know. So that's nice, you know.
I'm the opposite, especially during the mask mandates in Texas. I got a thrill. I loved it. I went everywhere. The only time I wore a mask was a hospital situation with my mom. There, you choose your battles, right? I'm not, you know, it's not about, but every time I went into a store, you know, I just psyched myself out. Okay, I might get kicked out. And there was a few times they say, oh, here's your mask. And I say, look, I'm not going to wear one, you know, but I respect your right to kick me out. You know, you can do business with whoever you want to. So anyway, I went everywhere without one, and I found out there was the code, you know, You're the only maskless one in the aisle. And then there's that dude at the end of the aisle, also without a mask. That look, you're like, dude.
I love that look. Yeah. And yeah, there's
But
only one
unfortunately, now
supermarket.
they lifted the mask mandate, so now you can't tell who's a freedom-minded and who's had their vax, and they're unmasked because they've had their vax, so it's hard to tell who's who has succumbed to the tyranny and who hasn't.
I mean, I just have to like say it's like it's a worldwide intelligence test, or a series of them rather. Are you intelligent enough to figure this out? Are you intelligent enough to realize that you look at ingredients before you have something injected into you, and that you really, really look at the ingredients, meaning like you look up each ingredient and like understand and then you go further to say, well, what's the potential downside and upside like that? Like a lot of people did not pass these intelligence tests at all. And so that's my cue to say, okay, I got it. My tribe of people chosen pass intelligence tests like this. They, generally speaking, will invest in a course like autonomy. They're generally speaking going to be, I don't know, on podcasts or making their own or both. They're going to be asking questions. They're going to be aware of who the hell Yuri Bezmenov is and G. Edward Griffin is. They're going to be aware of some very key component items. They'll be aware of the utility of some of Cicero, like I just gave here. And why should you go back to these ancient Roman and Greek people? What's the point of that? They know the answers to those questions. And then there's folks who wear a mask while on their scooter here in Hawaii. No helmet, but a mask on like that. And like, they're not thinking at all. It has nothing to do with thinking. It has to do with feeling like that. Now, I'm glad that they're not my clients. I don't work for them, generally speaking. So that's fine. And still, I know why I'm here, because I get to explore nature and the beauty of being here. And there's lots of it, like that.
Yeah.
I kind of am enjoying watching the world situation from this vantage point, even if it does seem a bit totalitarian. And I can see the utility in escaping it to where you are. It would, be having a utility.
Yeah, our friends up the way, they might be doing that soon, come January.
Oh, yeah, and definitely, Jim and Beth, they're on their way. Like they're definitely, they sold their place and they're already, in moves like that. I'm hoping to see them at least once more before they leave Island.
Aren't you from Illinois or somewhere? Where are you from? You've told me 2 or 3 times. I can't remember.
New York accent.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I don't remember, because when I hear New York, there's a block there. I'm like, what? It's trauma prevention. It's like a defense mechanism. When I hear New York, what's the word? Denial, or when you have a traumatic event and you mentally block it out. So that's why I can never remember where you're from, man.
Not far from, say, Richard Grove, like that, like that kind of thing. So when I go visit my mom, I am a short drive away to see Rich.
So you're in the southern part of the state?
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, like that. New York City and the Twin Towers was a field trip for me growing up. Yeah. Like that. And all those museums and frickin' Broadway and everything like that, So
that would have been nice growing up. I mean, New York City back in the day must have been amazing. It's the last place in the world I want to be now, but you're lucky to have had those experiences. We both are, to have visited. We're at a nice age where we've done a lot in our lifetime, and now we probably won't be able to. That's why I feel really bad for the younger generation coming up, especially the kids of the freedom-minded community. These kids are going to be at a huge advantage, don't get me wrong, but they're not going to be able to just get their backpack and go off to Europe like we did, and go off to to wherever, hiking the Appalachian Trail, or maybe they'll be able to do that depending on where they are. But you know what I mean? Their world is going to be completely different from the world we grew up in.
There are obstacles and benefits. Like, I never knew that I'd live in a future where, like, any video that I want, I could have for free, almost like all of it, like, plus, more importantly, a whole lot of like ways of self-educating for free, like at a higher level than I could ever get from like credentialed institutions, I would have never known that I'd have all this access to literally be making my own video and audio, etc. Like all of this, it's amazing. But at the same time, I go back another bunch of years, right? Because when my parents were growing up, they had a chance to go around to Afghanistan and to to Pakistan and India and to backpack over there, right? They had a chance to go there like that all the hippies were doing that. They were all going to those places and smoking hash and hiking around and pretending to be interested in yoga lessons and meditation and things like that, and transcendental meditation. This was very popular, and that of course became inaccessible, somewhere into the 80s.
Yeah, that
Because
definitely
then,
was beyond our or anything we could have done. And maybe we could have gone to Iran, maybe, but yeah.
no, it was too dangerous. It became, far too dangerous like that. So that's an example of, how things changed. And the same thing right now. There are places now that are dangerous to go to without certain credentials. The same kind of thing. It's just because it makes it prohibitively expensive. But there are other places that have opened up. And yeah, I think that, Pacific Crest Trail and Appalachian Trail are consistently accessible, probably. Obviously there's the bitch of having to restock places and going into a town and putting a fucking mask on just to buy some food for your backpacking trip. But
Yeah.
besides that,
That would take a bit of research if you wanted to avoid that. It would maybe possible, but
yeah, it is possible because there, the more rural inside of a state that you go, and all of them are like that, the more of leave me aloneism, as one of my friends called it, that form of voluntarism happens, where we just like, hey, just,
well,
I just want to be left alone and do my own thing. You do your thing. And that's the peaceful way of it.
well, that attitude is rampant in my circles here in East Texas, Northeast Texas. It's hard to predict. I mean, closer to get to the cities, the worse it is, but it just depends where you are. Yeah, there's so many factors that kick in.
All I know is that in the end of it, there's going to be the dividing line between those who see the value for freedom, and they're just not going to give up. They're just going to, stay the course like that. And there'll be those who will just continuously give up freedom for the promise of security, and they will cower and they will hide. And there'll be those in the front with their guns, and those in the front with, being verbal like I will be, and those in the front who just are going to, basically push the envelope. Those like you who are going to go say, no, I'm not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And then there will be those in the back who will go along to get along.
Non-compliance is the only way. Mass non-compliance is, I don't know if it's the only way, but it would definitely be the easiest way out of this nightmare. Imagine if everybody just said no, bam, it'd be over tomorrow. But that's not going to happen because they have been working on people's minds and bodies for a long time, because I will argue my hypothesis is they've been planning this for a long time.
I mean, I don't want to see it get ramped up to a fake alien invasion yet.
Oh man, I do not even want to know what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, all I know is that this stuff is really well predicted in books like Pendulum, by Roy Williams and Drew Michaels, and that covers that one. The same thing for The Fourth Turning, another book that covers a similar kind of pattern, that this has happened before many times in history, going back at least 3,000 plus years, that the pendulum will swing from the 80s, where it was like the worst part about the me type in that theory is phony posing and hero worship, where the presidents have to actually be perfect, like Reagan was, meaning like they're going to try to avoid any spots on his character, etc. Right. Whereas later on, they'll allow like a tarnishing of the hero kind of thing. And it's a phony posing kind of thing, but the individual is the pillar to be honored and like that kind of thing, maybe to the point of being fake. And then now we're in the other side, like 40 years away from that one, which is called which is the witch hunt. And that is the dividing people up by their tribes of, anti-vaxxer and pro-vax, and there are other tribes and things like that. It is unfortunate that it has to be at this time. It reminds me of that moment where like Frodo's looking at Gandalf saying, I wish this hadn't happened in our time. It's like, so do I.
Yeah.
And so do all such people who grow up in such times.
Yeah,
Gandalf is trying to
Verstappen's
paint his
historical
way.
cycles. Stefan Verstappen did a really good video on the historical cycles, and historically now we are entering that end of this period. Entering an age of chaos. So, we're taking action, getting ready for it. His course, the Complete Guide to Forming Communities. I interviewed him a few weeks back, and it was really interesting. He talked about which groups have done historically very well during these dark times and which ones have not, and why. Good stuff, man. And so based on everything he's been teaching, we're over here just trying to create our own community groups right now to kind of, ride these waves that are coming.
Yeah. And I don't know.
Hey,
what
that's a
kind of
good
waves are
idea.
yet to-
Surfers. That would be, if I'm going to create a mutual aid group, it's going to be called the Surfers. Something Surfers. Get it? Because we're riding the waves of the chaos. Amazing stuff. Speaking of the pendulum, the description of once the collective takes over, you've got a group of individuals, and then they become a kind of a collective, and that as a pendulum can become a real obstacle unless you recognize it as the pendulum that it is. Interesting stuff.
And those authors wrote Pendulum for the purpose of changing your marketing approach to go with what the flow is, to don't push against the pendulum. So when it's a we time like that, you go with messaging that goes with the tribe. We love you. You're part of our tribe. We hate them. They're not in our tribe. And that's how you get that kind of thing.
Interesting. Because transurfing's the opposite. It tells you how to avoid the pendulum, and if you have to confront it, how to deal with that. Very interesting.
Yeah. There are patterns that can be seen like this. And I mean, it always comes back to that getting things done where I know what my objectives are, which is to make the most prosperous life I possibly can, full of health and happy experiences. And then it's on me to then list what's today's objectives, what are today's actions that I'm going to do to move me towards my goal of increased abundance and reduced scarcity. And what are the resources that I need in terms of time and energy like that? And that I have to be precise on those questions. And once I answer them, then it comes down to that shows me how effective I am. Let's see if
I'm
I can
feeling
find
motivated. This is good advice. Stuff, I know myself, but it's nice to talk to you and get reminded about these things, because I easily lose my way these days. Especially like this summer, man. I really lost my way. As far as like sticking to my diet, I think I drank a bit more than I should have this summer. Wasn't too organized. I feel like I'm kind of getting back on track with I'm shadow hosting Autonomy now, and that's helped me get more into a routine. I've got the meetings. I'm getting there,
Nice.
But it's not too bad. I think, you and I have been very lucky in the things we've seen and been able to do in our lifetime. And we knew, quote unquote, conspiracy theorist world. Let's face it, we've known it was very likely that something like this could happen and probably was going to happen. That's why 10 years ago I started I realized I need to start learning to garden. I started to grow my own food. I basic skills that I had no idea about. I really took responsibility and started to teach myself these things, which previously, when I was a mainstream, naive, dumbass, processed college kid, I couldn't care less about any of that. But then as you slowly come to realization, it's very likely bad things are going to happen in the future. Once you start looking at the history lessons that can be learned out there, thanks to private, independent media shows like the Peace Revolution podcast and the Corbett Report, you get a hold of those. Man, that is some hardcore history right there. And you can see the pattern. It's coming. Something is coming. These guys, who they are, what they've been planning. I mean, not starting with Cecil Rhodes, but that was a tipping point with the Cecil Rhodes, the turn of the century. the Milner group, and you just follow the pattern, what it's leading up to, something bad is coming down the pipeline. So I'm glad that to have the experience that I've had. I don't expect to ever go to Europe again, and I'm cool with that.
Well, you never know. I mean, I think that at this point, we can't really see exactly what's going to happen, but I mean, you have seen the Georgia Guidestones,
No,
right?
no, I haven't. We were close one day. We were in Atlanta, went through it, and
You
I had
know
a
of them.
choice. We could go see the filming location of where they filmed Fried Green Tomatoes that day, or the Georgia Guidestones. And I thought, I don't want to see the Georgia Guidestones. I've seen 1,000 pictures of them. I don't want to bring my kids there. I don't want to go there. So we went and had some fried green tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe instead. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, absent bringing C4 explosives for there, I don't really see
Yeah.
a
Or
purpose in
did someone
that.
spray painted it? I think I saw photos of it all
That
sprayed.
perpetually keeps happening. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's going to take something a little stronger than that to etch it away.
But
But yeah,
how
that's
sinister is that? I mean, if that isn't the most sinister thing ever, and then you add that with things like, oh, just a conspiracy, but the mural in the airport in Denver, things like that. I mean, my
oh
God.
yeah. I just went down that rabbit hole with my girlfriend recently. She hadn't heard of the Denver airport mural. So I showed it, like I showed like her that, and the Lucifer, the horse that's there and everything. Um
Yeah, it's
but yeah,
unbelievable.
what I think is, like, I like to put this in the category called gang signs of the ruling class, same as the chemtrails mostly. Um, it basically, they're in your face for those who have eyes that are open and looking around and curious, and then go right over the head of everyone else to
I
create a
love that.
divide and
Gang
conquer
signs
of the
of
ruling class.
of the ruling class. Yeah.
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 And they've made their gang signs. It's how they flex their muscle. It's how they mark their territory, similar to gangs spray painting graffiti. The Georgia Guidestone is like ruling class style graffiti, like that,
I
where
love
they're just
that. Yeah.
basically saying that, and it's there to lower the vibration so that you feel, oh, like, look out and see the chemtrails, oh, like
It
get all
certainly lowers
tense, like,
mine, man.
hunch your back now. Maybe you should just, are you feeling bad? Maybe you need to self-medicate, Chris, you know
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. And meanwhile, at the same time, there's people who are trying to lift you up in the light, as I like doing more yoga nowadays, and that's like the opposite, where now you're like opening up, like, where you're investigating subjects like astral travel, like, and what can be done in the other part of your day where you're allegedly asleep. And
There's so much the human potential. I mean, to get into that, Owen and I talked a bit about that in my interview with him about the invisible world and how to tap into it other than psychedelics.
yeah,
But
there's
yeah,
a lot to be
people,
tapped into.
they lower our vibration. You're right. They know there's so many esoteric things that they know that the average Joe does not, that I myself am only still learning about. I love that stuff. Lucid dreaming. You can train yourself to lucid dream, things like that.
There are so many solutions, and it seems to be that way where, like, I was just, I guess, listening to them discussing, kind of white pill, black pill kind of stuff, which is kind of the duality of optimism, pessimism. And one of the guys, Scott Hambrick, was saying that optimism is for the weak. And I was just like thinking in my head, if I was there, I'd be like, hold on. Let's do a grammar check. Definitions, optimism.
Thank you.
So when
Yes,
I'm
very
saying
important.
optimism, maybe it's not very precise. What I'd rather say is that I'm going to engage in a small and short bit of positive visualization, seeing that I do actually have actual rational evidence that I've collected for positive experiences in my past and right now in my present. And I'm going to project that forward into a future by visualizing it. And in general, I'm optimistic is because I've experienced enough things to show me as optimism. My cryptocurrency wallets help me be optimistic. You ever check your wallets recently?
It's been a
Bitcoin's at
week or so, actually. What's Bitcoin up to today? 60,000 now? $64,000.
$64,000
Yeah,
per
good.
Bitcoin. It's
I got
once
a little
again,
bit of Bitcoin.
yeah, it's retouched its all-time high, and touched it yet again. So that's that's one component of it, and just learning how to manage it much better than I did 3 years ago, which is better than I did 3 years before that. Seeing like dating much higher quality women now than I was 3 years ago, and the time before that. Like,
oh, I hear country song coming on right there. Dating the girls 3 years ago, and before that they were worse, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And here we'd have like island reggae songs about it too.
There you go.
They mix in going to the beach with your ohana and stuff like that. Ooh, wow. Didn't mean that to happen.
It's alien attack.
Yeah, wow. That is a cheap light source. What can I say?
Darrell, wow. We got to wrap up.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring this full circle. Yeah, we talked a lot about a lot. We've recapped a lot of things. It's been really fun. The whole, I'll drop loads of links because a lot of this kind of was an elaboration of our last conversation and an update. And then, yeah, we've talked and plus a lot more. So to summarize though, so you've got your podcast at notmedicaladvice.com. And of course,
notmedicaladvice.co. Let me stop you right there.
Sorry. Yeah. Notmedicaladvice.co.
I wish I could afford .com, but
content safe.
.co. Yeah.
.co. What else? Yeah. What other plugins? What else you got going on?
Those are like, I am, if you really like, if you like me and want to hire me, because that's what some people do when they heard me on Sam Tripoli, I was on Tinfoil Hat. And again, also when I was on My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast, I had people hire me straight off of that one. So I am going to be setting up dbeckermedical.com. And that's where, people can actually to get some resources on how to help their health. And when people hire me, I write a healthcare report for them. I do a big, long intake, take an hour with them. I go over what their issues are, what they want to have done as a result. And then I give them some suggestions for their diet and their lifestyle or exercises and some supplement potentials that they could consider investing in. And then more importantly, I find the professionals like me or similar, someone who's going to be effective to get them to where they want to go, someone who will be doing biocompatibility testing. These are usually chiropractors. And that will be people who, instead of saying studies say, and that's how people choose like what medicine or treatment to give people, and a biocompatibility testing person, a chiropractor, or someone who learned how to do it from a chiropractor, we actually test to see what's biocompatible in the office directly and use the strength and weakness of muscles that people call muscle testing. We use the strength and weakness of the respiratory system, arm and leg length, and other mechanisms to check to see if a medicine, a food, or a treatment is compatible specifically to that person right there and then, right now. And that way you get accurate results instead of guessing. And I write people a report because I know how to find those people. And yeah, people pay me $500 for that report. Imagine that.
Yeah, that I will argue may have to be the future of medicine as well. Once, especially in the community we've been talking about, once they're no longer able to go and visit a normal doctor, people are going to have to take their medical responsibility into their own hands. In fact, my wife and I are signed up where we really, next weekend, we want to take a CPR course. I'm an idiot for not even having done that yet. Basic things like that. People are going to like to be able to stitch and little things like that, because there's going to come a point when your kid cuts yourself, you will not, the hospital is the last place that for people like us, you know what I mean? Well, you do not want to take them in, and you may not be able to. So I foresee, in fact, I just talked about this with Mike Nimitz today. It came up, we were talking about communities being created. There's another guy he was in Verstappen's course creating communities. He's putting together a group of holistic practitioners down in Mexico, a mutual aid group, just for that reason. So, I predict what you're onto, I will say, is probably the future of medicine among the what's the word for everyone that's going to be exiled from society, which is going to be interesting if it's actually the majority.
Societies. Yeah, I'd say we're making our own societies now. And
Yeah.
thanks to the interwebs, we're well interconnected, where we don't have to be in the same precise location. But it does help, in terms of mutual support, to make your freedom cells, to make your octologs, or your groups of people that are of the same mind. I'm certainly doing it over here. I've been working on it, like to find who is of like mind and where's my places of support, and who has what type of resources like that.
Very important. And that ties into what I was just talking about with Mike Nimitz and with what I talked about with Stefan Verstappen before that. It's
Right.
essential. I think if anyone's going to ride out these waves, they're going to do it a lot easier if they have a community both physically close and decentralized, spread out there as well. There's no reason not to be involved in both. And in various communities where circles overlap and you've got inner circles, it's all tying into the same theme. It all comes back to the same topic, that this has got to be done.
Well, I'm making a commitment that the next time we have a Midwest Peace and Liberty Fest, a red pill like exposition, that when there's a pork fest, and I'm going to be checking in to see who's going, and I'm going to make sure to get there, like, because this time I'm not missing out on all the other reindeer having their reindeer fun, and I'm not joining in the reindeer games kind of thing. Like, I am done with that. Yeah, I'm very grateful to cryptocurrency for funding that in the future, because it's already it's made moving up the street to a bigger place no big deal at all. I highly look forward to seeing what that one does. Chris, it's been so great to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Walking down the street where children play, for them it's just another day. The future's reflected in their parents' faces, who chose to stay on in this place where they were born, went to school, got married, and kids like their grandparents before them did. Got to escape, before it's too late. Although today I could say that I really will miss the when Santa, well, yeah, I was right. I knew what it was like when Santa.
You've been listening to truthconduit.com with Chris McMillan. Go to the subscribe page and sign up to get notifications of the latest posts. And check out the support page to help keep it going.
Yeah, I've got a friend in Jesus Christ. I've got a friend in Jesus Christ, and Krishna and Buddha and my bartender.
Have you found that your skills aren't matching up with the challenges ahead? Here are 19 essential skills for success that school never taught you. Get your free copy by following the link below or visit getautonomy.info/19skills.